On a rainy, cold September 26, 2023, I caught the metro and light rail to the Seattle airport for my Turkish air flight to Cairo via Istanbul, Turkey. I spent a week on my own before joining a 15-day Intrepid Tour to explore both Egypt and Jordan. After a 3-hour stopover at the Istanbul airport, where I enjoyed an omelet and Turkish coffee, our Turkish flight arrived at the Cairo airport on the evening of September 27th, and I took a taxi to my Holy Sheikh hostel. After a couple days in Cairo, I took the metro and train to Alexandria. My 3-hour first-class passage to Alexandria cost just $26. We passed many truck gardens and dusty towns that clung along the Nile River banks. I was excited to visit Alexandria after reading Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet novels with Alexandria as its backdrop. The romance and intrigue I had envisioned was gone, and I instead encountered in the old part of town garbage and dust everywhere, with scraped up cars and buses that favored their horns over their brakes. This tram took me to the Alexandria Library, now much smaller following the Roman invasion. In 383 BC, Ptolemy established the original library that had 100 scholars and housed over 700,000 works. In 48 BC, Caesar and followers set fire to the library. Later, Christians destroyed the remainder in an anti-pagan purge. As a nod to the greatness of its library history, I found these booksellers that lined many Alexandria streets. There were several live markets selling all types of animals, including rabbits and pigeons. The tomb of the unknown soldier along the promenade has no guards like I saw in the US and Greece. I stopped at the fish market for some seafood pasta on my way to Fort Cape at the end of the promenade. It was built in 1480 to protect the harbor from the Ottoman Turks. It was built on the foundation of the Pharaoh's lighthouse, destroyed in earthquakes, and the lighthouse was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, as well as one of the tallest structures beginning in the 3rd century BC. It was occupied by the Ottomans in 1512, by the French in 1789, and was destroyed and fell to the British in 1818. In 1904, the Egyptians began restoration, and after the revolution of 1952, it became a museum. Writers, artists, poets, and politicians gathered at Monty's Bar in Cecil Hotel during its heyday. I sat at the bar and had a lime soda where Winston Churchill, Lawrence Durrell, and others spent many hours enjoying drink, food, and company of others. All along the promenade, I saw several private beaches where you could enter for a modest fee of under $2. I entered this one, and with that, I got a lounge chair, a sun umbrella, and swam in the Mediterranean Sea. They offered food and drinks as well. The sea was not as warm as I expected, and it was dirtier, with garbage wrappers floating all around me. On the morning of my departure, I saw large crowds along the promenade and learned that they were having the countrywide monofin championships. It involves swimming around 4 pylons with each 250 meters apart. The crowds came from all over Egypt and were cheering their favorites on. another comfortable train and metro ride back to Cairo and my hostel. The hostel manager recommended I have dinner at the nearby Abu Tarak restaurant. It was easy to spot with its blue and red lighted 5-story building boasting a large blue lit sign, Abu Tarak. People were streaming in and out of this building, and I was seated on the second floor. When I asked for the menu, the server said there was only one dish served, either medium or large, and it was a vegetarian dish called kashari. The bowl was full of pasta, rice, lentils, chickpeas, fried dried onions, tomato chili sauce with cumin and garlic, with condiments added of lime and garlic sauce, or a peppery hot sauce called shata, plus a water bottle that cost just $2. It was delicious. While I was taking a video of Tahrir Square, a policeman clapped at me to stop, so I did. Very sensitive. I crossed this bridge over the Nile to meet up with my Intrepid Tour group at the Pharaoh's Hotel. After meeting the other 9 tour members, plus Hadi, our Intrepid guide, we headed out for dinner at the Khan al Khalid Bazaar. I had some grilled kofti, hamburger, and chicken with eggplant. We enjoyed walking through this crowded bazaar at night, and I enjoyed some Egyptian coffee afterwards while crowd watching and listening to the nearby Muslim call to prayer. This would be our most exciting day of the tour, with a visit to the Giza area with its pyramids and Sphinx, followed by a tour of the Egyptian Museum.
It is a vast or a huge area, big enough to build a pyramid with all of its surroundings, from tombs and mastabas of workers and nobles. The pyramid was not the only thing to be built. It was just something in a whole complex, right? Consisted of the Valley Temple, the causeway, and all tombs of workers and nobles, like the ones you see right there. So those were basically tombs for nobles who lived during the time of the king.
Senior Jemi Inti was buried here. He was the chief justice overseer of all works of the king Isis around 2370 BC, the 5th dynasty of Egypt. I entered the Great Pyramid of Pharaoh Khufu along with Dan, Sabine, and Thorsten to see the granite-lined king's chamber that contained the open tomb with contents missing.
Dat is geen oorspronkelijke weg, hè? Dat is gewoon een borengat voorzien.
As we ascended the steep Great Gallery, it continued to get hotter and stuffier with ever-shrinking walls and roofs. This woman turned around because she became claustrophobic and overcome by heat. At the final passageway, we had to crawl on our hands and knees to enter the granite-lined king's chamber, which was very plain. It lacked any reliefs or inscriptions. It was good to breathe fresh air and look toward the top of this pyramid and then head over to the Khafre pyramid. The Khafre pyramid has some remnants of the polished limestone covering that used to cover all pyramids, which would have made them glisten in the sun. Some photo magic. Intrepid Tours had contracted for all of us to take a camel ride, but only me and Nick from the UK were up for it. My photos and looks were not so good while riding.
Lean back, sir. Lean back.
When we visited the Sphinx, I was surprised with how small it looked. It was really large when you see the man beside it, but I think the photographers have used photo magic in the images of it beside the pyramids. This just reinforces how large the pyramids are, with the Khufu pyramid topping out at 480 feet. We stopped at this papyrus store and learned how papyrus reeds are formed into sheets of papyrus.
So now, stronger in the flexible, so now we can use it, but before we need to soak it in water 1 week to get the white.
These sheets display artwork that is for sale here. After this musical buffet, we toured the Egyptian museum that has lots of antiquities that have been removed from the many other historical sites like Giza, Abu Simbel, and Luxor. We then boarded the 13-hour night train from Cairo to Aswan. On board, they served dinner. After that, for me, it was a comfortable sleep on the rocking train heading south for about 250 miles.
picture for all of us.
Yeah.
After leaving the Aswan train terminal, our minibus was right there and took us in air-conditioned comfort to our obelisk hotel that fronted on the Nile River.
Now we are on the main street of Aswan city, which we call El Corniche Street. Any street in Egypt that overlooks the river Nile is called El Corniche in any city or in any governorate, right? Our hotel will be coming now to the right-hand side. So you are in the downtown of Aswan. You can go out of the hotel at any time.
Air conditioning and the swimming pool at the hotel were blessings, with temperatures here getting up to 114 degrees. We took a cool and refreshing boat ride on the Nile River to the Philae Island, where we toured the Temple of Isis.
Building it was to control the water of the river Nile during the flooding season, as it was submerging the lands of Egypt every year. And second reason was to generate power and electricity. You can leave the life jackets here in the boat, right? So you just leave them here, we go visit the temple, we use them when we come back.
The entire temple was moved out of the floodwaters of the Nile between 1972 and 1980. It was disassembled into 40,000 pieces and reconstructed 66 feet higher on this island. Construction began in 1690 BC and was one of the last Roman outposts where the Isis goddess was worshipped as the Romans began converting people to Christianity. This cult began in the 7th century BC. The cult of Isis continued here until at least 550 AD. After that, Christians defaced some of the pagan reliefs, and later the Muslims further vandalized this site. The Kiosk of Trajan is an unfinished monument to the Roman Emperor Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 AD. Our boat now returned to Aswan to visit a fragrance factory. We sampled all types of perfumes that they sold to perfume companies without adding any alcohol. We watched a glassblower make perfume bottles. In the evening, we took a small boat across to Elephantine Island, which has a large Nubian community, and where we had dinner with a Nubian family. Aswan has a large Nubian community, and many are refugees from war-torn Sudan. Egypt has no Nubian refugee camps because Nubian families here absorbed these refugees. Over 70,000 Egyptian Nubians were displaced and relocated when the High Aswan Dam was built between 1963 to 1965. After a huge feast of vegetables, rice, and meat, one of our travelers, Cassia, was surprised by a birthday cake in her honor. She was also given a henna design on her hand as a present from our Nubian host. After dinner, we returned to our hotel for an early morning start to the 4-hour drive south to Abu Simbel Temple, just 12 miles from the Sudan border. As the sun came up, we stopped at this breakfast cafe along with many other tourists.
As I was saying, so Egyptian government is trying to make Abu Simbel road 2 ways because there are a lot of people are using it at the moment. You know, this is the road to Sudan, and we have a lot of Sudanese who come to Egypt at the moment. So there's just to facilitate, you know, the moving products. Basically, water coming from Nasser's lake, right? And then there's a statue carved between the two in the middle with a head of a falcon and the sun disk over the head. This is one of the gods of this temple, Ra Hurakhti. Okay, Ra Hurakhti. Between the legs and of Ramesses II, there are statues of his beloved wife Nefertari and some of his sons and daughters. Right. The smaller temple of Nefertari is the one right there. Above the heads of the king, there are baboons, if you can see them. Do you see the baboons? It's like not right above the head, but just, you know, above that kind of register. Yeah, baboons. The ancient Egyptians show baboons.
The Abu Simbel Temple was also moved out of the floodwaters of the Nile when they put in the high Aswan Dam. They cut it up into just 4,000 pieces for the move. By comparison, the Philae Temple was cut into 40,000 pieces for their move. As I approached the entrance to the Ramses II Temple, the 4 pharaoh sentinels seemed to guard the entrance to the inside chambers. Once inside, the carvings depict many of the stories of the successes and adventures of the pharaoh Ramses II. These temples were carved out of the limestone mountain between 1274 and 1244 BCE. This inner sanctum remained in darkness for all but 2 days of the year. The ancient architects made it so sunlight would reach it on the anniversary to the throne, February 22nd, and his birthday, October 22nd. 3 are in sunbeams, Ramses II, Ra the sun god, and Amun the king of gods. And the 4th remains in darkness since it represents Ptah, the god of darkness. Lake Nasser was created by the construction of the High Aswan Dam between 1958 and 1970. It is 298 miles long and 10 miles wide. The Temple of Hathor, or Nefertari, to the right of the Ramses II Temple, is fronted by 6 33-foot statues of Ramses II and his spouse Nefertari, with some of their children nearby. Instead of fighting and victories, the inside of this temple features and celebrates family, joy, love, and motherhood, with Nefertari as the central honored character. It was then back on the bus for the 4-hour drive back to Aswan and some free time to swim and shop.
And there is something to the extreme right that looks like a fork, if you can see it. Like something with many things like that, see? Yeah, to the extreme right there. Which is the symbol of friendship between Egypt and the Soviet Union that the president of Egypt got.
Matt and I walked through the Aswan public market where I bought my usual mango juice box. Although we are going downstream, the wind is blowing south into us, so our felucca frequently tacks back and forth.
Okay.
Here is the route of our felucca sailboat to our campsite, followed by meeting up with our bus to Luxor the following morning. These kids are paddling up to our felucca to ask for either food or money. We saw scores of these cruise ship hotels as we made our way downstream. I preferred our manner of travel. With the wind coming at us, it seemed a lot cooler than the 110 plus temperatures during the day.
Yeah. No, the trench was pretty good actually. I like the new thing. Yeah, the trench was pretty good.
Yeah, okay. I just took up.
It's all about preparation.
Right.
She's good.
They are lowering the sails to go under the bridge and to visit with their Nubian friends who are fishing along the shore. We're just chillaxing as we cruise down the Nile. I am trying out my native garb. We are passing a line of these cruise ship hotels as they make their way to Aswan before dark. They are hauling in the sails as we approach the shore to tie up for the night. As darkness comes, the crew lowers the mosquito nets and the temperature only drops down to around 80 degrees as we have dinner and prepare for sleep. After breakfast, we quickly make our way across the Nile to our waiting minibus that will take us 4 hours to go about 50 miles to Luxor. We stopped at this shop to buy some goodies and to go to the bathroom. We were surprised by the primitive toilet. It takes a long time because many of the villagers have put up speed bumps or sleeping policemen to slow down traffic.
You now.
Mohammed?
Yes.
What's the name of our hotel?
Emilio. Emilio. Emilio.
Every year.
Every year they have
Here is the view of the Nile and the Luxor Temple from the Emilio Hotel rooftop. After dropping our bags off at the Emilio Hotel, we toured the Karnak Temple, which has a series of sanctuaries, kiosks, and obelisks dedicated to the Theban triad, but also to the pharaohs of the 18th to 20th dynasties, 1570 to 1090 BCE. The scarab was the ancient Egyptian amulet to bring good luck and wealth. Ancient Egyptian belief is to have a wish granted to receive good luck and wealth. You must walk around the scarab beetle 3 times, 5 times to nullify envy and bring luck, and if you want to be fertile, it's 7 times. These myths have passed from Egyptians to tourists, as you can see. This was the largest and best preserved and restored of all the temples we have seen so far. This is one of the reasons why the Karnak Temple is considered to be the open-air museum. Deeply carved hieroglyphics at Karnak were done to minimize vandalism. We enjoyed our dinner at the Al Sahibi Lane restaurant as we watched the sunset and heard the calls to prayer. At 6 a.m. the following morning, 4 of us, Sabine, Thorsten, UK Nick, and I, took off for
بس تمام كل هذا الحبل يا زيزو حاضر على اخر واحد نفك من ناحيه دي وخلاص.
After rejoining the others, we visited the mortuary temple of the Hatshepsut, which has been largely reconstructed. When the arms are crossed on the statues, it signifies that the person was dead, and the ones with arms at the side signify that the person was alive. It was also interesting that many of the women's statues sported beards to signify more authority.
He is beating them in front of the god Ra Huraxi. So he is with the head of a falcon and the sun disk over the head. While here, something very interesting here, right? You can't see. No, it's like here. But it must be here. This is the king, right? Behind him, the two persons are holding fans, two fan bearers, right? Now, there are some of the king's followers. Now, see? They are counting. They're not doing that just like that. See, look at this guy who is holding a papyrus reed in his hand and the papyrus paper, right? And he is counting, like, you know, he's getting told by this man how many hands they cut, and same thing is repeated here. So he is like writing down how many, you know, penises they have cut at that time, right? As I told you, the hieroglyphs are very deep in the wall. So he has to shut it.
We then drove around the mountain to the Valley of the Kings, where we explored many tombs of the pharaohs, including the tomb of Tutankhamun. Of 18 identified tombs here, we visited 4. The first one was the tomb of Tawal Saret at the top of the valley. We then visited the tombs of Ramses IX, Tutankhamun, and Ramses IV. This is an interesting 3D model of what it looked like underneath the mountain that shows the passages to the various tombs. As we walk through these passages, it's hard to determine which reliefs are original and which are restorations. Most of the tomb's goods, including the inner coffin made of 450 pounds of gold, are at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo.
Yeah.
After we returned to the hotel, some of us headed down to the Luxor Temple, which was just a few blocks away. This was the end of the 3-kilometer paved walkway connecting it to the Karnak Temple, and is adorned along the way with human-headed sphinxes that are currently being restored. The ancient Egyptian Luxor Temple was founded in 1400 BC and was expanded by 18th dynasty pharaohs Amenhotep III and Tutankhamun, and later by Ramses II. Under the Roman Empire, it was used as a fortress and government building. The Romans constructed a military fort around the temple that the Arabs later called Al-Uqsir, which was later corrupted to give the modern Luxor its name.
He's not a good tour guide. We can find.
On our return to Hotel Emilio, Matt and I walked through the nearby Luxor Bazaar and were offered many bargains by the vendors. Just before our 10-hour night sleeper train back to Cairo, we loaded up on goodies. When we arrived in Cairo, Hadi, our guide, arranged for us to return to the Pharaoh's Hotel to shower and freshen up before 8 of us would continue on to Jordan, the next part of our adventure with Intrepid Tours. As most of us boarded our bus to the airport, we said goodbye to Katrina and Nick, who will continue their one-year adventure next to Bosnia. We all thanked Hadi, our Egyptian intrepid guide, who made our Egypt adventure so special. Here is a link to my YouTube channel that contains my travel clips and full-length travel videos. Please subscribe if you enjoy what you see.